This podcast is sponsored by Lightens. Lightens, your best source for OE quality automotive and heavy-duty accessory drive tensioning devices. We know tensioners because we invented them.
Roger, welcome to AMN Drivetime, sponsored by our friends at Lightens.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We're glad to have you. We're here at Babcox World Headquarters in Akron, Ohio. And again, welcome to you. Roger, tell us a little bit about your career. You have a Ph.D. in mechanical engineering. You're a certified Six Sigma black belt. You're involved in a number of very prestigious scientific and educational organizations, and you're involved in auto racing. Is this your dream job at Valvoline?
Heck yeah. I have a great time. I enjoy going to work. A little background on how I started. I hired into Cummings Technical Center after high school as a janitor. And none of my family really went to college. My high school advisors told me that I wasn't smart enough to go to college, that I needed to get my butt into trade school. And at the time, that was a union position to be a janitor there, paid pretty good money. My dad ran a garage, so I'd kind of grown up working in the garage, and there were a lot of guys that were engineers at Cummins that would work second shift at the garage for my dad, and they were really smart guys. And I thought, you know, hanging out at some place like that with a lot of smart people is not a bad idea. And so I went over there, and I really have to put a lot of thanks to Cummins, because I walked in there as a janitor and with a high school diploma, and walked out with a Ph.D. in mechanical engineering. When I left, I was leading intellectual property, advanced manufacturing, and materials engineering for the corporation. And spent a lot of time working, most of my time working at the R&D Technical Center in Columbus, Indiana. About 1,000 people there. Really cool facility, 89 test cells. They burn about 1.6 million gallons of diesel fuel a year, distant test. So you really get intimate and comfortable with internal combustion engines. And so I've been an internal combustion engine guy my whole life. I'm learning batteries now though, because we all are. But that's how I got started, and ended up with this opportunity to move over to Valvoline, and have been thrilled ever since. What a great company, what a great group of people, really enjoying it. Enjoy the position. Have got to go to Baja a few years ago and race the Baja 1000 with a team of folks from Cummins and from Valvoline. We built the trucks, we took them and we raced them. It wasn't one of those things where you just show up with your helmet. We all got dirty and got, you know, got our hands and knuckles knocked off and did the right thing and made it happen. We also ran the Mint 400. We've done the diesel drags, a lot of different things like that. So enjoy those kind of things that are that marriage between athletic performance and engineering knowledge.
How long is that Baja race?
The Baja race is supposed to be 1,000 miles. It's usually a little less than that. It was 800 and some, but we didn't manage to finish. We actually broke the frame on the truck behind the steering box, and so when you turn the wheel, it wouldn't turn to the left. It would turn to the right because of the way the frame was broken. It would push it that way, it wouldn't push the other way. So it created one of those things when you're riding along on the coast of Baja, Mexico, and you've got this big drop off to the Pacific Ocean over there, and you can't really turn left very much. It's not a good situation. So we kind of chipped it in after that and said, we're not going to make it this year. We took 2 trucks and we had a really good time. We learned a lot, and you know, you never hear anybody say that went exactly like I expected, and I learned a lot. We worked our butts off, and we had no prior knowledge or prior experience. So we took a team from Valvoline and from Cummins with no prior knowledge, no prior experience, and just dropped us in. And we really all come back with our head high because we thought we did, you know, pretty darn well for our first time down there. And it was, what a great time. And it's one of those times when I tell people all the time, it's the only place I've ever been that every 20 minutes something would happen that would take about 4 beers and an hour to tell somebody out at a bar. It was like that the whole time. It was amazing, the stuff that went on. Sometime we'll spend some time, I'll tell you some stories.
Great. So, Roger, in August, a month or so ago, Valvoline announced the sale of its global products business to Aramco, with plans to intensify its focus to the retail services business. What can you tell us about this change, and why was it an important time to make the shift?
You know, I think we all kind of sat around and thought that since there's not much upheaval in the automotive industry right now, things are pretty quiet. You know, there's not a change in propulsion systems going on. There's not much happening with emissions. Let's just do something to really stir things up.
Good timing.
Yeah, no, that wasn't it. But the point is, you know, my sarcasm is evident here, but the point is that we had a situation where we had two separate businesses, both very good businesses doing really well in a P&L and all that kind of stuff. And one was focused on growth. The other was focused on a more traditional, a mature market kind of thing. And so there were two separate things that really played to two different investors. I tell people all the time, it's a lot like this. We were part car, part truck. And so we ended up being an El Camino. So if you've ever had an El Camino, you know that they're kind of good for a lot of things, but not great at anything. It's one of those deals where it kind of works for, and that's kind of how we were. And we decided, let's be a truck and a car. Let's go after what we're going after and get crisp on things. And so we're doing that. And so Aramco stepped up, and they're going to acquire the global products business, and I'm going to be a part of that group. I'm incredibly excited to work with them. You know, they've already talked about they want to preserve the nature of our business, our ethical standards are common. I'm just really excited to get to be a part of this. It's wonderful that we have somebody with that kind of commitment to the automotive industry and to the environment to be able to help us to take this to the next level.
So I'm not sure everybody in our audience knows what an El Camino is. Now, I was born in
showing my age here, aren't I?
I'm born in 1962. I know what an El Camino is.
There you go.
I wonder what the last year they made the El Camino. Do you know?
I would say early 80s if I was guessing. I know they made them in 78, 79. I'm not sure they made it to 80. I'd have to ask the Google because that's not something I can do off my hip, and I didn't have that in the notes that I didn't bring.
The El Camino was cool.
Yeah, El Camino was cool, but it wasn't great for hauling stuff, and your friends couldn't go because you had one bench seat,
right.
So you had two people with you, and that was all.
You're right.
And it just didn't do a lot of things that we're used to today, and that's why it's not here anymore.
Right.
So there you go.
So, Roger, Valvoline began piloting EV services in its retail stores this year. Tell us about some of the big differences you see in creating products and services for EVs versus the ICE engines.
Well, EVs are new, unique, and different. NUDs, we call them. And this NUD that we have to look at what is it that is creating issues and creating opportunities and things that if you're driving one of these, you'd really like to be confident about. And so in order to do that, what I've been doing lately is I've been driving an EV back and forth and understanding what a plug-in EV is to drive that. Because like I said, I'm an internal combustion engine guy. I've never driven an EV before. I have a golf cart that's as close as I've gotten. I've learned a lot about them. And as we've done that, we've understood where the pain points are for ownership and what we can do to help with that. And also what we can do to make sure, just like we do for internal combustion engine customers, that when you get ready to go somewhere in it, it's ready, that you're confident about it. We like to give you that confidence that you know that this vehicle has been looked at by experienced people that are well-trained, that understand exactly what should be going on here, and that's what's happening. And it's all about giving people that confidence. It's quick, easy, trusted. And we're just carrying that over into the EV space.
The ICE vehicles are getting a lot of play these days, right? I see in California they only will sell ICE vehicles starting in 2035. It's hard to imagine how that would actually happen, but
we'll see how that turns out for them. If in the midst of that, they were also at the same time announcing that they wanted everybody to back off their thermostats on their air conditioning because the grid couldn't keep up. And now we're talking about moving this huge volume of vehicles onto that because a lot of places out there, we don't, in the U.S., have the extensive rail and the capabilities that we see in Europe and in Japan and in China. I mean, it's really a sad thing that if you want to get from Chicago to New York, if we benchmark China, we should be able to do that in 4 hours in rail and we're done. And we can't do that in the U.S. You know, you're stuck on a plane to Atlanta, which if you do the energy balance on it, you know that's not a good plan. That's not how this ought to go. We need to be more holistic in how we look at these things and looking at it in a more broad view instead of just zeroing in on one thing and saying, if I fix that, then everything around it gets well. And that's not exactly what's going on.
I've read recently where Toyota and other car companies aren't embracing it as much as others. So there's a bit of there's mixed opinions on it. Right?
There are mixed opinions, and it's that way anytime you see a change in technology,
yep.
Even within the technology itself. When we look at EVs and where it's going, you see some people that want to use a high torque motor and a very small gear train because you don't have to have a lot of gear. Some other people will say, no, we want to go with this inexpensive, very high speed motor, but then we have to have an extensive, very gear train to be able to lower that 100,000 RPM motor down to something that runs 600 RPM to be able to go down the road at your rear axle. So it's interesting to see how different people, and this is going to have to play out. It's something the market's going to decide, and we have to be agile and looking at what's changing and understanding what's going on all the time to be able to stay in step with it and to understand where our role is in it and how we become more effective at it.
Roger, in addition to EVs, Valvoline is expanding in other areas such as heavy duty. What else will we see as a priority or as a high priority in Valvoline's growth strategy over the next few years? Can you share that with our audience?
I'm not supposed to, but I will. Isn't that what you're always supposed to say when you lead the R&D group and you're on one of these? We're actually doing a lot in heavy duty because if you think about how electric's going to deploy, this is a two-sided thing. We've got a lot of work going on in electric, and that takes care of one side of the house. The other side of the house is what's going on with heavy duty. We already seen that, EV scooters are everywhere. EV golf carts, that's it. Now EV small sedans, and they're easing into some small SUVs. It's going to take them a long time to get to a Class 8. And we know that area still needs to be able to become more energy efficient, and our products can help that happen. And so we're constantly working on that. That's one of our big pushes, understanding energy efficiency. A lot of that also even moves us on into spaces around power generation. If you think about what are we going to do in the future? Well, we already said that, California's having trouble. They're going to have to add power gen capability. How do you make power? Well, there's hydroelectric, but we've already pretty much dammed up everything we can in the U.S. And there's, a lot of renewables. Renewables are great, but you have to remember that the Earth is a closed loop thermodynamic system where it has a certain amount of input from the sun every day and then it uses that energy. When we start putting up large wind farms and we start putting in solar panels and taking out vegetation to put solar panels in, we're changing the environment. If we want to admit it or not, we are. And we've already seen some of that play out in some specific areas around how things change when we add those kind of things, but that's where we're pulling energy out. And then you think about the most effective way to do it is nuclear.
Yep.
But that's probably the least in vogue right now. And so that's not going to happen. So what we see happening is a lot of natural gas internal combustion engine generation because you can pepper it across the range area. Electricity doesn't travel that well. And so as you can distribute generation points, you gain efficiency. And so we think that's a space we're going to play in going forward. We see a lot of opportunity there. We see a lot of opportunity to help facilitate the move to a different energy source, and we think that's the right thing to do. And we're also looking at things like carbon capture. We're looking at all these other ways that we can offset this, even zero carbon fuels like hydrogen-fueled internal combustion engines, which have a great future for heavy duty.
Fantastic. So, Roger, reading your bio, I see that you have 13 patents.
Ish.
All right, what was the first one, and what did that feel like?
Well, you know, patents are cool, and the first one was on some stuff that's very nerdy and never really got used, so it's kind of anticlimactic to talk about it now. You know, but the one thing that it doesn't say in there, and the one thing that I've been blessed to do was, you know, as I was working at Cummins, I got to work with Oak Ridge National Lab quite a bit and the Department of Energy, doing a lot of unique funded work down there that was funded by both Cummins and the Department of Energy. And there were a few distinct times down there when we were doing work in a nuclear reactor, taking neutron beams and measuring crystalline structure of materials and learning things about it. There are a few aha moments in my career where we actually were the first ones to measure something and knew that that happened. That to me, it trumps all the patents. You know, it's not anything that you can, you know, lay out, or it's not, you know, something that you have a trophy for at your desk or anything like that. But man, there's that feeling the first time that you ever learn something, you know you're the first person to ever measure this and to actually realize that it's real. There's a feeling in that I've never, it's like racing. It's just another one of those times where you just go, nailed it, you know? And it's racing and exploring science are the two big things that push me in my life.
So, Roger, two questions in one. Most memorable piece of advice you've received, and are there any mentors that are especially memorable or helpful to you as you've started when you graduated high school and here you are now?
I've been blessed with a lot of mentors and a lot of folks, and if I tried to list them, I'd miss some of them. So I'm going to stick to the one the one that was probably the closest was my maternal grandfather. And he was very patient and very quiet and very calm. And he told me one time, he said, you know, people come in here and they get all excited. They were entrepreneurs. They ran their own business, him and my grandmother together. She was as busy as he was. And he said, people come in here and they get excited. And he says, a lot of time, he said, I just go somewhere and sit down until they calm down. He said, what you have to remember is if you don't get something done today, it'll either be there tomorrow or it won't. If it's there tomorrow, you have another chance. If it's not, you don't have to do it. He said, either way, you're okay. All you need to do at the end of the day is feel like you put in the best day you could. And I think that keeps us all from getting a little too crazy sometimes, is just put in a good day and the rest of it will take care of itself. So that was my grandpa. He's a real smart guy and I listen to him a lot, and I'm always throwing grandpa sayings to all the folks that I work with, and they're probably tired of them by now, but I'm not. So they have to listen to him anyway.
That is terrific homespun wisdom.
He was a smart man.
Right? So, Roger, before we let you go, we're going to do something we call the lightning round.
Okay.
I'm going to give you two choices, and
right.
You're going to have to give me an answer off the top of your head.
Okay.
Okay? Roger, early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Summer or winter?
Summer. If there are no palm trees, I'm not interested. Talk to me about palm trees.
Well, I can answer this one. Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Rolling Stones or Beatles?
Oh, that's hard. That's both, I'd say. I'm a big 60s, 70s rock kind of fan. My parents played it when I was young, and I grew up listening to it, and I've always kind of kept it. So,
for me, it's the Stones. I've probably seen them a dozen times in concert.
Cool.
Cash or contactless?
I seldom carry cash. I got past cash a long time ago, and it just tends to be a hassle, and I don't like things in my pockets, so change was always a problem for me, so I'm contactless.
Okay. University of Kentucky or University of Louisville basketball?
Neither. Florida State football. Ph.D. from Florida State, was down there when they won the national championship in football, and was blessed enough to get to go to some of the games.
Who'd they beat in the last game, championship game? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but it was Jameis Winston was quarterback, so it hadn't been that long ago.
Not that long ago.
Like I said, I did all my school when I was working full-time because I worked full-time through all my studies, so it took me a long time to get that done.
Got it. Oaks or Derby?
Oh, that's easy. Oaks.
Wow. Beer or bourbon?
Beer. I know that everybody in Lexington just went, ooh, but I'm a beer guy.
Last one, hot brown or pimento cheese sandwich?
Pimento cheese sandwich. Hot brown's just so much. My gosh, how can you eat all that?
Roger, great to have you on AMN Drivetime, sponsored by Lightens.
I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it, and now I've enjoyed being part of it. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
This podcast is sponsored by Lightens. Lightens, your best source for OE quality automotive and heavy-duty accessory drive tensioning devices. We know tensioners because we invented them.